Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Annalisa and I did tell you I was going to be extra this month. This is a werewolf, in case you're wondering. Just settle that so you don't have to think about what the heck is going on with my face. Today I am telling you about more of the books that I've been reading for the Monsterathon. There are 11 or 12 days left and I have 5 more books to read plus the 3 short stories. I think I'm gonna make it just fine. Since I last updated you, I have read 7 more books, so let's start. First I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the Kiss Quotient because I reread it during this period because I liked it so much the first time and it was very comforting for me, and I was having a bit of a slump, so I was doing a little bit more rereading instead of getting on with my TBR. And so 2 things in particular I wanted to note about that book, and those are 2 side characters. One is Quan, who is the cousin of the male main character Michael. And I think he is really great because he is a really good friend to Michael in that he both really cares and also butts into his business when Michael needs his business butted into and gives him a hard time when he needs it. And one particular instance that I really enjoyed was Michael and Quan are walking down the street and they see across the street Stella, the love interest of Michael, about to get kissed by some other guy, and Michael lunges because he's gonna go stop it because that's his girl, right? But Quan grabs him and stops him because you can't go being possessive of people like that. That's creepy. Stella then evades the kiss, but the other guy keeps trying to kiss her, at which point Quan lets Michael go and says, okay, he's asking for it, which I really appreciated, that you're allowed just the little bit of dialogue about how you're allowed to interfere when someone's getting attacked, but you are not allowed to interfere when somebody's just kissing someone else. Then there is Stella's mom. I really appreciated the way that her mom stuck up for her to Stella's dad when Stella's dad was being a gigantic jerk about Stella's new boyfriend. She tromped all over the dad's sexist crap that Stella needed a boyfriend who was super successful monetarily, with the reasoning that Stella is really well off monetarily and she doesn't need to be financially taken care of, and also that you shouldn't judge people based on their socioeconomic status. Then I also wanted to mention that I reread How to Be a Normal Person by T.J. Klune. He makes me laugh so much, even when I've read the jokes 2 or 3 times before, as in this case. I was laughing pretty much every page, plus it was so comforting and meaningful having another neurodivergent character who was falling in love and living his life and being taken care of by people but also taking care of people, and it was just a really happy, mushy story, so that helped me in much the same ways as Kiss Quotient. Then we have The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers, and this was for the Area 51 prompt because it has loads of aliens in it. There are a few humans, and the person I would call our main character because her perspective is the first one introduced, and it is her being introduced to the group that kicks off the plot. But this is a multi-perspective story from 6 or 7 members of the crew of this fairly small ship. And like 2 of them are human, 1 of them is this lizard person who also has feathers, 1 of them is partly humanoid, partly a virus that lives inside him, so kind of like some of the creatures from Space Opera by Catherine Valente. And there are a couple of other types of aliens, and the plot of The Long Way is only slightly existent. It's definitely not a plot-driven story. It is a character-driven story, and basically it uses the excuse of them going a really slow and roundabout strange way to a small angry planet to explore all the personalities and cultures of the various crew members. So there are some crew members with really different family structures, such as the lizard bird lady has like a feather family, which is a found family you create when you grow up. And there's also like a hatch family, which is the kids you grow up with and the people who raised you who are not your biological parents, and we get to explore a lot of that and talk a lot about found family and how this little crew is a found family with some very weird people in it. There is also a sentient AI who, much like the Doctor from Star Trek Voyager, has gained a personality and a consciousness from being left on really long and having years of experiences, and I really like that. Content warning for major character death. only one, I think. Also, it's sapphic. So if you like that, a fair section of the characterization involves that. Then we have A Dream So Dark. This is the sequel to A Blade So Black. It picks up right where the last one left off, and there's a lot of characterization in this one. So a little bit less plot going on. There is a sort of quest to get to a certain place to get a certain thing, but our characters have all been separated for various reasons. So it's not like the Fellowship all tromping together. It's like after they get split up and then they have all these separate journeys that you follow one at a time. And in that way we got introduced to a new love interest for both halves of the main romance from the first book. I don't think it's a spoiler because they've just been introduced. We have no idea who anybody ends up with or anything. And so there is a lot of casual queerness going on with those four people. I really like the new characters who were introduced in this book, as well as further exploring the old characters. We got some more backstory for both Anastasia and Hadda. Also, if this is a selling point to you, there's a very dragon-ish type creature involved. Then we have Goose Girl, which along with The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet I listened to on audiobook. And this was a fairy tale that I have not seen retold before or read the original version of. There are several retellings, and this is a story that for one kept hitting the poor main character while she was down. One tragedy would strike after another, and I kind of got the vibe of what kind of story it was going to be after in the first little bit of the story everybody didn't like the main character except her dad, who loved her and was super supportive and didn't care that she was weird and that she talked to animals, and then he died. But that's the kind of book it was. It's the main character would have one good thing in her life and then it would get ripped away again and again. So that was kind of weird and a bit depressing. I had no idea where the overall plot was going because I didn't know the story, and I couldn't really figure it out from what was going on thus far. I really liked the emphasis on the common people, and the main character started out as a princess and ends up getting to know a lot of commoners, and I really liked that aspect because she really learned way more than she had or would be able to from reading books or from listening to the upper classes, because the upper classes had no idea what was going on with the lower classes, and they didn't know about the various divisions between their people or how their culture was affecting people. And I like where the story ended up going fairly well. Content warning for pet death. And that one was for the prompt Upside Down, which was to read a retelling. Then we have Smoke Bitten, the last for now book in the Mercy Thompson series, and this was for the Secret Crypt prompt, so something with a mystery element to it, because in this book we are introduced to a number of mysteries. First of all, there is something mysterious going on with the main character's husband, psychologically, that he won't tell her about. There's also a strange new creature attacking people in the area, and we need to figure out what it is and how to protect ourselves and our people from it. And then there are some other werewolves coming around to try to take over our pack, and we have to figure out who they are and why they're here and how to tell them off without killing them, because that's just rude. I really like it when book series that have a couple that gets married during the series shows that getting married isn't the end of the story, and that you can continue to have difficulties and problems in your relationship after you're married, and it's not like the happily ever after section of your life. And I liked how they worked through this problem together, even though it was really difficult. This is also a werewolf centered story, so there is a pack, and the pack spends quite a bit of time at their alphas, which is Mercy's house, and so we get to see a lot of those relationships and how they are a found family in some ways, but also somewhat like a biological family, because they didn't all choose necessarily to be with each other because they liked each other. Various other circumstances and their geographical location partially decided that for them. And so there is a lot of personality clashing sometimes, but there is also this unifying thing of they all really care about the pack as a whole, and also most of them really like their leader and are very worried about him when he's got a problem, like in this case. Also, I think my favorite character in the series besides Mercy is one of the pack members who isn't like a big important pack member, and he doesn't even have like a huge part of the story, but he is in almost every book as a funny and also really precious side character. In the first couple of books, we don't know much about him, and he's got a questionable past. We don't know if maybe he was a really bad guy before he joined this pack, but as we learn and get to know him, he becomes just this wonderful person, and I really loved seeing that growth over this series of how we learn about people, and they also change to a certain extent because of the people who are around them, and they come to be so much more important than they seemed they would be when they were first introduced. So that's one of the reasons that I really like reading series, because you get that long-term type of development. Then for more werewolves, and for the rearview mirror prompt, which is to read an indie book, I read Tainted Moonlight, and there are a couple of good points for it, which are: one, it is a werewolf story with none of the alpha omega dichotomy slash hierarchy structure going on. They just live in little families with humans, basically because the government knows about them. There was a little outbreak, and a bunch of people got turned into werewolves, and most of them are locked up, but a few of them can live with human caretakers who kind of have custody over them. And so there aren't any werewolf packs, at least in this first book. We might meet some later in the future, but there's a lot less of that kind of toxic need to dominate people thing going on. I enjoyed the friendships that our main werewolf character had with his friends quite a bit, but there were unfortunately quite a few cons. For one, there is a central romance, which I found completely unshippable, basically because from the beginning this relationship is introduced as the guy likes the girl because she's pretty. She's got blonde hair, she's curvy, she dresses nice, and he meets her in a bar. When she was not looking to meet anyone, by the way, she was sitting at the bar trying to get drunk because her husband cheated on her. She initially likes him for his sense of humor and being, you know, a modicum of nice to her, but as the story goes on, it becomes clear that the only reason that the male main character likes her is because of how she looks, and that she's like a decent human being. There's nothing in particular about her personality that is actually talked about him liking about her, and for her, she only likes him because he takes care of her when she's in trouble, which once again is just being a decent human being. So that was very irritating. And then the prose was very difficult to deal with. There were too many adjectives and verbs that were more descriptive than they needed to be, and adverbs everywhere, which aren't bad in and of themselves, but combined together with none of the words that were used actually helped build a picture and a vibe. They were just kind of there. And the dialogue was, I got so much secondhand embarrassment and awkwardness from the dialogue. I hated that. So it took me a really long time to get through, and I really couldn't enjoy the other aspects, like the plot. The plot was relatively good, but I couldn't really enjoy it past the way that it was expressed in words. But next I read Shadows in Death, which is the most recent book in the In Death series by J.D. Robb. And so this is a series of police procedurals centering on a detective who is well established in her career. She's a lieutenant. This is the 51st book, so a lot of background has been established. Many side characters have been gradually introduced book by book, and we have gradually learned about the backstory about our main set of characters as well as a few of the side characters. And in this book we learn more about the background of the love interest of our main character, Eve Dallas, and rather than being a investigation where we have to figure out who murdered somebody, this is one that is a manhunt style where we know who did the murder, but we don't know where they're hiding and we have to find them. And I really like that she switches it up like that every once in a while. We have so many different formats of story that can be gone into, because obviously at the 51st book you'd think that they would get stale and feel the same as the ones before, but I always feel like there's something new, and I just really enjoy it. Although while I do enjoy the main plots, I definitely am there for the characters and the subplots. And so this is another series that really focuses a lot on found family, which includes basically everyone that Eve Dallas works with, the psychiatrist she works with, who is her mother figure, her former partner, who is her father figure, her current partner, who is like a sister. The last one was the girl with all the gifts, which is a zombie story, and that I also listened to on audiobook. This was a very strange story. I feel like I've been reading a lot of strange stories recently, partially because I've been trying to read a lot of books centering on monsters, which I think went pretty well this time. This is about a young girl, about middle school age, I think, who is in a class with a bunch of other kids her age, and she sits in a chair with manacles on her feet and arms and around her neck during class, and then gets wheeled back to her room at the end of class. And all the kids around her are in similar circumstances, and we learn through the book that that's because these kids are in fact zombies, sort of, but they aren't like the rest of the zombies because they still have brain function and can like think about things and have empathy and aren't just mindlessly trying to eat stuff. And so that's why they're in these classes, because they are being studied themselves. So the beginning of the story, kind of Act 1, is about this girl figuring this out and the people around her realizing that maybe these kids are more sentient than we're giving them credit for, and maybe they shouldn't be manacled to chairs and then have their brains taken out and examined. Maybe that's not really the best thing. And then Act 2 is about adult zombies attacking and fighting them and dealing with them. And so I enjoyed the second portion more. That's more what I like in a zombie story, and it's more classic sort of a zombie story, but the first part was really interesting and the dynamics of that, and overall I think it was a really good book. Content warning for a lot of character death and body horror, also possibly medical trauma because of the whole taking out the brains bit. I really liked the zombie lore that we got into because we got to see both from army guys' perspective of how to fight them, and also several scientists' perspective on how the fungus in this case, rather than virus or bacteria, works. And so now I have terrified 7,397 villagers, and overall my team, the Beast, has frightened 124,694. The haunts are back at 89,603, and the conspiracies are at 114,280. So my team is winning, and I'm very thrilled about it. My local library has been closed due to bad air quality from smoke for like a week, so I'm really eager to get back there and get some more manga, but I do already have access to everything I need to finish out my prompts, so that's really good, and I'm very excited to see more of what everybody else has been reading. Also, I did the Frankenbook challenge, which is where you make up a new book by combining elements from 7 different books to make a really weird combination of characters, plot, and purpose. And so that was really fun. I'll link that selection of tweets down below because I did it on Twitter. It was quite a bit of fun. Robin Wild from Wild Like Me is the main character who got picked by my Twitter friends picking random numbers. And I think that the situation she ended up in based on other numbers people picked was really fun and really interesting for someone like her to be put in. So I'd love to know what you've been reading this month, what you've enjoyed and not enjoyed. Do you also go through phases where you are really good with reading audiobooks for a while and then they just don't work with you and it kind of goes back and forth? Because right now I've been reading a lot of audiobooks really well, but then for a while back in like July and August I was just not reading any audiobooks. So I'd love to know if you have like specific audio versus physical reading slumps. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!